The time is 10:42 p.m., July 5th, 2019, in the great state of Texas. My name is Mickey, and welcome to yet another rendition of the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. I am here with Dealer and Chip. Why don't y'all introduce yourselves?
Hey everybody, let's do this.
Alright. Let's go.
And since it's July 5th, we are going to start the show off by talking about the most American sport on the planet, basketball. And how, for the first time ever, the Toronto Raptors, up in the Great White North, have themselves an NBA championship led by Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard. Chip, what are your initial thoughts? Did you expect that the North would be the one to dismantle the Golden State Warriors dynasty?
Going into the playoffs, they are definitely not the team I would have picked. Probably would have had the Rockets, Milwaukee Bucks, or maybe even the Celtics as the only teams that could bring the Warriors down. Still don't think that if everybody was healthy that it would have been much of a series. Maybe the Raptors could have pushed it to 6 games, but they got on a roll. Their role players started, just stepping up, kind of like the Mavs back in 2011. All their role players just kind of did everything that they needed to do, and then a little extra. They had the one superstar that, you just couldn't stop, so earned it.
Now, you mentioned that the Golden State Warriors, if they were healthy, you could only see Toronto pushing it to 6 games. Kevin Durant was out for a good chunk of the series, came back in the series and made his injury even worse, to the point where he's now not even going to play the entirety of next season. And then you got Klay Thompson going down in Game 6. This leads to the question, will this championship for Toronto have an asterisk next to it?
There's going to be some people who bring that up. But at the same time, a few years ago, the Warriors were on the opposite end of it. Kevin Love and Kyrie got hurt in one finals. They were down 3-2 against the Rockets when Chris Paul had the hamstring. I think it was the year before that when Zaza kind of bodied up under Kawhi when he was coming down when they were playing the Spurs. So, really, any team, I don't know, it seems like any team lately, you could put an injury asterisk next to their titles. So some people are going to, I won't, because, it's just part of the game.
It is true. Steve Kerr has been on record saying that it takes a lot of luck to get to the NBA Finals, and injuries being one of those key components of that. Let me ask y'all something. If the Golden State Warriors somehow won this series, who do you guys think would win Finals MVP?
With everybody out that was still out, right?
Yes. Let's say Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant still go down. Warriors somehow win the series. Who wins Finals MVP?
It would have to be Steph, because that's the only way I could remotely see them coming close. That one game where Klay and Durant were out. Steph had 47 points, and they still lost by a bit, but he's the only way that they would possibly have a chance. The role players
rock through it.
Exactly.
There's a rock through most of their playoffs, so I think that, by saying that he would be the MVP, that's not a stretch of the imagination. He just needed some more protection during that series.
Right.
It's very true. Stephen Curry is the focal point of that offense, but he is surrounded by shooters with Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, the NBA Finals MVP the previous 2 seasons. And it's interesting that Stephen Curry has yet to nab that Finals MVP, because in 2015, Andre Iguodala won Finals MVP that championship run. Now, let me ask y'all something. Do you think Kevin Durant getting hurt and injured, do you think that the Warriors had no backup plan, at least one that could work against a team such as the Raptors? Because if you look back at the footage and the series itself, actually the entire time Kevin Durant was there as a Warrior, it really seemed to me that when they signed him, the offense shifted from a kind of the dynamic duo between um, Thompson and Curry with Draymond Green and the what is it the front court, and it shifted towards Kevin Durant, where he would be the primary shooter that no defense would have an answer for, and as a result of that, and you can see it in this final series alone, that the Warriors bench was not very deep. You still had Andre Iguodala, you still had Sean Livingston, for whatever that's worth, and then you brought back Andrew Bogut, who ended up getting hurt. Stop me if you've heard that one before. And it just seemed like I'm just reminded of the 2011 series where it was really the Dallas bench that kind of propped the Mavs up along with the starters against a team, the Heat, that the focal point of it was the big three, and when the Mavs found a way to stop that, the Heat had no answers. But bringing it back to my original question, do you think the Warriors should have had a backup plan just in case Kevin Durant went down? And if so, what should it have been? Because they clearly didn't.
I mean, ideally they would have, but, in today's NBA where you have a salary cap, you have to kind of pick or choose. Steph's going to command his 30-plus million. Durant, same thing with him. Opportunity to get DeMarcus Cousins coming back for the mid-level exception. I think it was like 5.5 last year. So, there's only so much money you can really put into a team. Livingston and Iguodala being a little older, they didn't have somebody like David West that they had a couple of years ago. There's only so much you can really do. They did find a couple players like McKinney, the small forward. As a bench guy playing 10, 15 minutes a game, he's effective, but if you have him replace a good chunk of Durant's minutes, there's decent rotational guy compared to one of maybe the 15, 20 greatest players of all time. There's only so much you can do.
You're putting him that high up. Top 20.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I'd have to sit down and kind of write it all out. But, at his peak, peak performance compared to everybody else in history, I'd put him top 20 for sure. I don't know where he would be exactly, but
top 20. How about that? Now we've talked we've talked enough about the Warriors. Let's talk about the winners of this series, the Toronto Raptors. Man, what is it with Kawhi Leonard and him and just slaying dynasties? He did that to Miami, and he did it again to Golden State. You gotta wonder Toronto struck gold when they traded DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard from San Antonio back last season. Was there anything that Golden State could do to contain Kawhi and his supporting cast, or do you just think that Golden State from the start was just ill-equipped?
Yeah, really, once he lost, you had Boogie, who got hurt in the, I think it was the first round that he got hurt.
With that torn quad.
So he was he was already going to be a shell of himself this season anyway with the Achilles from last year. Then he tears the quad, and you watched him, and he couldn't move at all. Then you have, Clay got hobbled earlier, and then obviously tore the ACL, and with Durant out, it just got to a point where there's enough capable bodies to really do anything. and then plus on top of that, if they would contain Kawhi, he really developed a lot, grew a lot during the playoffs. He was never really a playmaker, I would say, but in the playoffs, especially towards the later half, he was putting up 5, 6, 7 assist games, finding the open guys, and Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry were just hitting the open shots that they were getting. So,
oh yeah, and then you got the most was it the most improved player of the year, Pascal Siakam?
Yep.
So you got him as well in the works, and then you got I'm going to go ahead and say that this is one of the. We never really discussed the trades of this previous season, but when the Raptors picked up Marc Gasol from the Grizzlies, I mean,
Well,
hindsight.
They trade away a fan favorite though. What? At what cost?
Well, I mean, the Grizzlies would go on to trade Mike Conley, so that era of the Memphis Grizzlies is officially over. But I remember making a point earlier in one of our previous episodes of how Golden State brought back Andrew Bogut to fill in that defensive gap that they had with DeMarcus Cousins going down. And I said, oh, well, what great foresight was that? And then Andrew Bogut got hurt, and the Warriors ended up losing the series. When I should have said, man, Marc Gasol, what foresight was that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Gasol is just one of those players who, he can fit into any sort of, any system, really, in the NBA. 'Cause he's just such a smart player. You look at him, he's obviously not the most athletic guy in the league at all. But, he knows, he understands angles. He knows how to, body people when they're coming down the lane. He can stretch the floor a bit. He's a really good passer, really good screener. He's just kind of that guy who, you have your offense set, and then you just put him in there, and he kind of fills in all the cracks for your defense. So, yeah, that's one of the trades that if they would have been able to.
What do you guys think about, Jonas going to the Grizzlies? In all honesty, it seemed like he wanted to stay with Toronto. It seems like he wanted to be there. He wanted to be, and honestly, it wouldn't shock me if he came back to Toronto.
I think he re-signed 3 years, $45 million to stay with the Grizzlies. But yeah, I mean, he's younger. He's a good player, but the Raptors, they were that close to to the top. You have to make those kind of hard decisions,
Right.
Sure, in 5 years, Valanciunas is probably going to be, he'll still be in the NBA. Gasol will probably be on his way out. DeMar DeRozan was a fan favorite, but, you have the opportunity to get Kawhi. It's just sort of one of those, you only have so many chances to win a ring. You just kind of have to do what you have to do.
Do you think that Danny Green is going to follow Kawhi?
I think if he goes back to Toronto, I think he will. But if he goes to the Lakers, I don't see Green giving up that much money because I think he would have to sign for basically the minimum if Kawhi goes to LA. He's already won a few championships. He won one with the Spurs, won this year. So I think if LA, I could see Green deciding to go elsewhere, make 10, 12 million this year instead of I think it's 2.5 for the minimum.
Yeah. I don't know. I would like to see them team up again under the right conditions, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, it could all just be a show. He could just be waiting for the bigger chip to fall so he could maximize his money afterwards. Because if he signs before, he's not going to get that much money. But if he waits, he can maximize his money, and that's what this really could be all about.
Right.
It is certainly possible because within the past that's actually a perfect segue into our next segment, which is the NBA free agency. Dealer, you mentioned that Dana Green could possibly be waiting for the final chip to fall, and that might be, in fact, what Kawhi Leonard is waiting for, because there has been a massive, massive power shift within the NBA, especially when it comes to free agencies. Do y'all just want to get in and talk about the big one with Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan, and Kevin Durant all going to the Brooklyn Nets?
Let's jump into that. Yeah.
So one thing to note first is that Kevin Durant is not going to play this upcoming season due to his re-aggravated injury, but you still got Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan and an eventual Kevin Durant all in one team. Now,
when does he come back?
Kevin Durant
should be start of 2020, like the 2020-2021 season.
So is you gotta remember here, is he gonna just sit on the sidelines hurt and be a cheerleader, or is he just not gonna be visible to the public? What's gonna happen?
Actually, honestly, I'm not 100% sure how they'll do that. I'm sure he'll at least show up to some of the games, but they might not have him be there like every day.
Because you don't need to parade around a hurt guy, right?
Right.
Your $1 million hurt man on the side of the lines. You don't need to say, "Hey, we need to fly across the U.S. now." Okay, you don't need to be doing that. Or is it something that fans want to see?
I mean, really, I feel so. Might as well just let him kind of rehab however he needs to.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to take a guess, I'd say the Nets are going to do something similar to what the Warriors did with DeMarcus Cousins this previous season, where he's going to be at the games kind of maybe as a cheerleader, just to show the fans, hey, this team can work when they're finally ready. So I doubt I'm 95% sure you'll see Kevin Durant at most of the Brooklyn's upcoming games. So
you can see that.
So Brooklyn, quite the stacked team they have here. What does it say about... Now, for those of you who follow sports figures, you've probably seen the emotional turmoil that Stephen A. Smith of ESPN is going through right now, considering he is a humongous New York Knicks fan, and having Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan all go to the Brooklyn Nets, just down the street from the Madison Square Garden, not literally, but metaphorically. What does that say about the New York Knicks organization that all three of those players said, nah?
That it's a steaming pile, and everybody that is slightly intelligent and good at basketball is smart enough to stay as far away as possible, I think.
Now, one of the points that Stephen A. brought up during his show, during his, I want to say emotional intervention, is that he mentioned that the allure of the New York Knicks franchise, the grandeur of playing at and being a starting player for the Knicks at Madison Square Garden is gone. While I certainly think this was the final nail in the coffin, I gotta say, this was... I will say that this is a bit of a long time coming, because the New York Knicks haven't been in the playoffs in quite some time, when they were title contenders. At the last time they were in the NBA Finals was in '99, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Allen Iverson.
Oh my God, is that Coolhand?
Yes, sir.
Oh my fucking God! Holy shit!
It only took me 2 hours to get my food, so we're good. We're good.
Jesus Christ! And Coolhand, you mentioned Allen Iverson. I want to say that was in 2001.
I think it was 2000. I'm not 1,000% sure on that, but it was in that. As a matter of fact, they might have lost to the Spurs in '99 or 2001.
The New York Knicks?
Yeah.
That does sound correct. I do remember. I can't remember if Patrick Ewing had retired by that point or not. I want to say he was still on the team, but it was more like David Robinson, where he was more of a role player than an actual force to be reckoned with. And speaking of forces to be reckoned with, moving on within the NBA free agency, we have D'Angelo Russell, formerly of the Brooklyn Nets, going to the Golden State Warriors.
Don't forget to mention the Los Angeles Lakers in there.
The Lakers? I mean, they got Anthony Davis. I mean, trust me, we're going to talk about that.
No, D'Angelo Russell was originally drafted by the Lakers, second overall. And then he was traded to the Nets, and they ended up drafting Lonzo.
How about that? Now, D'Angelo Russell going to the Golden State Warriors, knowing what we now know about Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant leaving and Klay Thompson staying. What do you do? You think the Warriors are going to be as dominant as they were last season, or do you think they're going to slip into maybe like a 3, 4, or even a 5 seed and going into next year's playoffs?
Oh yeah, they're definitely not going to be as dominant. You know, you lose Durant, one of the top 2, 3, 4 players in the league. Klay Thompson, you know, one of the top 5 shooters in the league, really good defender. You know, they had to get rid of Iggy. You know, they have made a lot of moves this offseason that they got Willie Cauley-Stein for just a little bit above the minimum. Brought back Kevon Looney. Then, you know, trading for D'Angelo Russell. I definitely think they're good enough to make the playoffs. But yeah, it won't be like it's been the last 5 years where it's just like, oh, okay, who's probably coming in second. I could see them pushing for a 3 or a 4 seed depending on how Russell and Steph kind of fit together. I think they'll be good, but they won't be, you know, obviously they won't be historical anymore.
I agree. That 73-win season, I believe, is going to evade them for the... I don't know if they'll ever get... I don't know if it will evade them for the rest of eternity, but I doubt they're going to get that level of success again. Coolhand, you were about to say something.
Well, what I will say is, I think D'Angelo Russell is an underrated player, and I think this might be the demise of the West, and I'm not 100% sure with D'Angelo Russell. And by the way, that Willie Cauley-Stein signing might be the best signing of the free agency. I'm not sure they're not still the best team in the West. I mean, you got Steph Curry, you can score when you need him to. I don't know what they're going to do with Draymond, if they're just going to pay the luxury tax or they're going to try to find a way to get rid of Draymond.
Mm-hmm.
But with Klay Thompson sticking around, I mean, still a high... They won a title without basically all the rest of those guys.
I mean, just with Klay, probably... I think Klay will probably miss all of next year with the ACL.
Yeah.
I mean, if he does come back...
even if he does come back, he won't be 100%. He'll be Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, you know, maybe, like, I could maybe see them playing him, like, 20 minutes a game come playoff time. Although with, you know, how much crap they're getting for, you know, how it kind of looks like they rush Durant back, they might just kind of, like, bite the bullet and just sit Klay, even, you know, when they do make the playoffs next year. So,
no.
3 with Russell, Draymond, and Steph. So I think the year after, if they keep Russell, they could definitely be contending again, but might be a year different.
the thing for the Warriors is they built themselves through the draft.
Right.
Draymond was a second-round pick. You know, it's not like Steph Curry was a top 3 pick. Klay Thompson was, I think, the 9th pick.
I want to say he was 11th, but yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Even Looney, he was a first-round pick, but it was way towards the end.
Right.
Like, they've done an unbelievable job of drafting and bringing players in. You know, they weren't the Raptors. You know, the Raptors are the first team ever to win the NBA championship without a lottery pick. Not one.
That is quite surprising.
Oh, wow.
And so it can be done in this modern NBA without the top 3 draft pick. Does it make it easier? Of course it does. If you end up with LeBron, of course.
Right.
But in this league, it's really about finding those role players. And we won't really know how good anybody is until Kawhi decides what he wants to do. If Kawhi stays in Toronto, the Lakers are a strong team. If Kawhi signs with the Lakers, of course, they're going to be the favorites to win it all. But if he signs with the Clippers, it really, really changes things.
Right.
There is in fact a power shift going on in the Los Angeles basketball team area, and I'm not talking about the earthquake they unfortunately just had.
Prayers out to all those guys.
Yes, our deepest sympathies and condolences, all that good stuff. Now, moving on, Coolhand, you mentioned this would be the demise of the West. Sticking into the East, where apparently most of the big free agency moves are happening, Kemba Walker of the Charlotte Hornets are now going to the Boston Celtics.
Honestly, that's one of my favorite moves in free agency. Kyrie is obviously a great player. On a team with so many talented young players, though, I think having somebody like Kemba might actually work out better. He's really he's his own guy. He can be real. It seems like he can be really hard to, play with, get along with. Where everything you hear about Kemba is he's just a great guy, and one of my favorite parts about that move. 3 years ago, when Isaiah Thomas was having his, almost MVP season, I think he averaged like 29 points a game. That's really one of the players that Kemba reminds me a lot of. Is 3 years ago Isaiah Thomas, but Kemba's like more human-sized.
Yeah, he's bigger and stronger. He's bigger and stronger than Isaiah is, for sure.
Yeah, 6 foot, 6'1", compared to 5'9". He's not a defensive stopper by any means, but he can at least, body up to people a lot better than Isaiah can. So I think, Boston will be able to go back to that offense that they had a few years ago with Isaiah Thomas leading the team, but just a better version of Isaiah Thomas. So, yeah, I honestly really like that move a lot.
Something I'm curious about with Kemba Walker going to Boston is that Boston is not going to be the same Boston from last season. They did lose Al Horford to the Philadelphia 76ers. So, my question to y'all...
$30 million.
What was that, Coolhand?
He turned down $31 million.
That is
he did sign for 109 though, so
yeah, that's fair.
So my question to y'all is Kemba gonna put them into, knowing what we know about the Celtics roster so far, with Kemba going there, do you think I forget what seed the Celtics entered into the playoffs this season, but do you think they're gonna be somewhat in the same position as a 4th seed, or do you think they're gonna be maybe a 3 seed, or do you think they're going to be a little bit lower into maybe a 6th seed?
So what I will say about the Celtics is I actually think they got better even though Kemba Walker is not a better player than Kyrie Irving.
Mm-hmm.
By himself, Kyrie Irving is an elite player. Okay, I will say that till the day I die. But Kemba Walker is a better team player than Kyrie Irving. And so he's not going to be the super douchebag in the locker room that Terry Rozier, even though he got traded-ish, the signing trade, whatever that's considered. And then Jason Tatum, all those guys couldn't stand Kyrie. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to bring in a guy into the locker room, by the way, who's already won a national championship at UConn as a 9 seed.
Talk about a throwback.
Who's going to be willing to play the game.
Right.
So your point is that he's, despite the fact that Kemba Walker isn't the better player than Kyrie Irving, he fits better with Boston.
Yeah,
he's just a better teammate in general.
As far as like talent goes, yeah, Kyrie's probably the better player, but it's really neck and neck. It's not like you're comparing, a Hall of Famer to, a bench player. It's two like bona fide all-stars.
Absolutely. One might be a little better than the other, but in the grand scheme of things, you're really changing a similar player to a similar player, but a similar player with a better attitude.
Right, and by getting rid of, because Kyrie is definitely an ISO-heavy player who holds onto the ball a ton. Al Horford he didn't need the ball a ton, but he still kept the ball a bit. Freeing up those two players.
They're going to hurt losing Horford. They're going to hurt losing Horford.
Oh, yeah, but at the same time, it's going to...
More of the mental side of things. More of the leadership side of things.
Right. That is true, but also getting rid of those two players, it's going to let Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, two players who kind of took a step back last year. It's going to they're going to be able to be a lot more involved in the offense, be bigger parts of it, and hopefully that's going to help their game grow. So a
lot what I see with the Celtics is they're going to play Kemba at the 2, and they're going to have Marcus Smart running the point. And I tell you, that's a tough roster right there. If you're running him, those two guys out, plus Jason Tatum, just give me a guy who can give me rebounds.
Yeah.
And we'll see if Boston's front court will indeed be their Achilles heel or not. So, we're going to wrap up this segment by talking about the Yield Mavericks and their free agency moves. But right before we get that, I'm just going to list off some rapid-fire free agency moves. And within maybe a sentence or maybe less, I'm going to have Chip and then Coolhand, and then Dealer, you can throw in your 2 cents if you feel like it. I'm gonna rapid fire give y'all some free agency moves, and then y'all can tell me whether you like it or not in a sentence or less. So Chip, you'll go first, and then we'll go to Coolhand, and then Dealer, feel free to chime in if you so please. So first up, Derrick Rose to Detroit.
2 years, 15. It's cheap. It's not going to make or break them. I like it enough.
Coolhand.
I love it. I love the move. I think if they can find some outside scoring, they're going to be unstoppable this year. Blake Griffin was unbelievable for them last year. So mixing him with Derrick Rose, even if Derrick Rose was, three-quarters of what he was in Chicago, this is going to be a pretty good team next year.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would say if he stays healthy, it's a solid move. If he goes back to being the hurt boy we all knew him as originally, it's a laugher.
I agree with all of that sentiment, but I would personally put more emphasis on the injury part that Dealer brought up. Next, J.J. Redick to New Orleans Pelicans.
That one I love a lot. Again, it was pretty cheap. I think it was like 13 little over 13 a year. Good veteran leadership. He's going to show all the young guys that the Pelicans brought in really how to work. So yeah, that's one of my favorite moves. Plus, he's going to space the floor for Zion to kind of work more on the inside. That's one of my favorite signings of the offseason.
Agreed. I think it was a fantastic pickup for them. Fantastic pickup. They really added a piece that they were missing.
And Dealer, do you think JJ Redick, the stop and shoot 3-point shooter, will be a good fit for the supposedly unstoppable Zion?
Absolutely. It's you kind of need a leader who has some achievements underneath his belt and to kind of guide the new guy. Now, I know a lot of people are saying that Zion's going to be the team, but he's going to his success is going to be really connected to this signing.
All right, moving on.
I agree with you. I just want to throw this out there. They have so many dribble driver guys. They had to get someone who could shoot some threes. They had to. And this is a perfect fit for them on that end.
I agree.
Next up, we have Ricky Rubio to the Phoenix Suns.
I mean, it's the Suns. It doesn't really matter. I mean, for them, it's a good pickup. Was it 3 years, 51, I think? So, it's not crazy long or crazy expensive. He's a good player for what they have because they have so many, just scorers, DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker. He's not a guy that's going to keep the ball in his hand a ton. He's a good defender. Seems like a good, locker room guy. But it's the Suns. They're going to be bad. So, whatever,
I agree. It's the locker room is going to be one of the key points there you got to look at.
Coolhand, what do you think of the Rubes going to the Suns?
I mean, they did what they felt they had to do, but yeah, it's the Suns, man. They're in bad shape. They're going to be bad for a decade, and they're going to be moving to another city sometime within the next 7 years. So, were those shots fired? Yeah,
I think you just pissed off all of Phoenix.
Live in a real city. Nah, I'm just kidding. Phoenix is a good city.
Oh, wow.
Well,
what? Let me ask you this: what city do they live in?
Seattle.
Oh.
I really could see that happening. All things considered, I really fucking could.
I can get behind that. Yeah, I can get behind that.
And one last pick before we talk about the Mavs: Jimmy Butler with a whopping 4-year, $142 million contract with the Miami Heat.
That one's tough. I mean, he's a good to great player. He's, a bulldog, really has that bulldog mentality, but at the same time, he's really hard to be around. Plus, I just don't know. I'm not really sure if Miami really has enough to compete in any real sort of way. I mean, it's a good signing for them. He's going to help them. It might be kind of by the end of the deal, but it's a fine deal. It's the deal he was going to get somewhere. So some team was going to give it to him.
Yes, Jimmy Butler is notorious for having a very similar mentality to Kobe Bryant, which is if your focus isn't 100% on winning and you're not going to put 100% effort into it, then get the fuck out of my face. So I am curious how he's going to do over in Miami, considering the division they're in, how stacked the East is, and which is something I never thought I'd say 10 years ago. And then on top of that, Dwayne Wade just retired. So here comes this other potential franchise player, and Jimmy Butler coming in for 4 years with the Miami Heat. Coolhand, what do you think?
Well, I just hope Jimmy Butler's used to finishing in 10th place in the Eastern Conference for the next 4
years. Ouch.
There's no talent around him. The one talented player they actually had, they tried to trade.
Goran Dragic?
And Goran Dragic.
Oh, that's a great answer.
They already traded Whiteside. Whiteside's already been traded.
Yeah, to the Trailblazers of all places.
That's a great fit for them.
100% agree.
Be a good team next year, but that's for another time. I don't blame the Heat for what they did, and I don't blame Jimmy Butler for what he did. But the Heat are going to suck for the next decade. And so I hope Jimmy Butler is happy with making with making money the next 3 years, and then them trading him to some contender in the last year of his contract.
Dealer, what do you think of the Bulldog Butler going to Miami?
It's a signing, but it's not the signing. When you are number 5 in attendance of the NBA, you got to make a move every offseason, right? You're one of the upper parts. There's plenty of people who literally decide if they're going to renew their season ticket spot based upon their team signing people, right? They want to see the team making moves if they're going to make their money moves. It makes sense. So I think that this was a move. Hopefully, it's an alpha fish move. Kind of stirs up the locker room, focuses them on winning. Could be a good move, but it's not the move.
I have to agree. While this is a huge signing for the Miami Heat, it is not the signing. All that the free agents, everyone in the free agency is talking about. It's that, of course, is what we already just talked about with the K's and the D's going to the Brooklyn with the Nets. And to close out the free agency segment, we're going to talk about the Los Lonely Mavs. Now, right off the bat, we discussed this a tiny bit over during the pre-production meeting, but the Mavs signing Marjanovic, I gotta admit, I find this move perplexing because he's a true center. He's not like Anthony Davis or Kristaps Porzingis, who the Mavs also re-signed, or not re-signed, but signed to a max contract. He's not like those players where he can play the 4 and the 5 if it's asked of him. Marjanovic is a true center, and which tells me that Porzingis is gonna, if those two players are on the same floor together, they're gonna put Porzingis at the 4 spot, despite the fact that he's taller than Marjanovic by, I want to say, at least 2 inches. So, what are y'all's initial thoughts on this?
I mean, for me personally, I think it's a fine deal. They're not bringing, Marjanovic isn't somebody that's going to play 30 minutes a night. There's 96 minutes between the two front court positions. Porzingis is a really bad rebounder, so, you're going to need kind of bigger guys to kind of help him bang down low every now and then. Plus, with how skinny Porzingis is, you can play. You should play him at the 5 the majority of the time, but it would probably be smart to have him get a few minutes against some of the smaller guys, like people that are a little smaller, not as physical at the power forward spot. So Marjanovic for $3.5 million a year on a permanent basis, he puts up great numbers. So he's going to play 10, 12, 15 minutes a night, give or take. So I don't think it's anything that's going to really hinder Porzingis's offensive output. If anything, it's just going to kind of save some wear and tear on his body.
Coolhand, what do you think?
I actually like the move for the Mavs. As a Spurs fan, Boban really came in with the Spurs. He only played 54 games with the Spurs, and to this day, they still cheer every time he comes onto the court. It doesn't matter who he's playing for, because he gives it his all every time. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, Porzingis is a 4. He's very Dirk-ish. I'm not saying he's Dirk. A little better defender, not nearly the shooter, but he's really a 4. He's not a 5. And so I think this allows Porzingis to open himself up a little bit and not have to bang around in the post with all the health issues he's having.
That does make sense, especially when considering that the Mavs did re-sign Dwight Powell to a re-sign, I think, for 3 years, $33 million. Could be wrong on that, but they did.
Pretty much right.
So they do have a backup center in case shit goes south, which this is the Mavs. You can't really put past anything past them. And then the final move that the Mavs made, at least the last one we're going to talk about, is Seth Curry is coming back. For those unaware, Seth Curry was a member of the Mavs for a little bit, and then he went to Portland, and now he's coming back to Dallas for a 4 years, $32 million. Now, it seems to me that Rick Carlisle and the Mavs want to surround Luka Doncic with shooters. And Seth Curry is a shooter. So, any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's another deal that like when I first saw it, I liked it, started thinking about it more, and honestly, I really love the deal. You know, he's not somebody who needs the ball in his hands, just to catch and shoot, come off screens, spread the floor, which is exactly what Luka needs. You know, Luka running a pick and roll, have Seth in the opposite corner. The last few years, he's been right there amongst the league leaders in three-point shooting percentage. I don't see that changing at all with the passes coming from Luka. You know, $8 million. I wouldn't have wanted to sign him for anything more than that. But yeah, I think it's something that's gonna help. You know, gonna help Luka, because so many times last year, you know, especially towards the end of the year, he'd hit somebody wide, like Tim Hardaway Jr. or something wide open for a three, and he'd break it off the front iron. I think that's really one of the moves that, you know, could help the Mavs sneak into the playoffs this year.
Coolhand.
It's a little weird bringing him back on such a long-term deal. And he signed with the Kings for a year, and they're bringing him back on a 4-year deal. $8 million's a little high. I'd say he's probably about a $6.5 million player.
Mm-hmm.
But they have got to have someone who can shoot the ball.
Right.
Outside of Luka. They have to. And Seth can do that. My joke was he's missing a P in his name. But still shoot. He's going to be a 7-8 guy off the bench. He's going to make some three-pointers for you, and there's something to be said for that. Is he worth $8 million a year for the next 4 years? I think they overpaid him. But they had to bring in somebody who's comfortable with the situation, someone who knew the Mavericks organization, and since he was a former player, he really kind of knew what was going on, and I think this is really going to be a good fit for him.
And we shall see if it does, in fact, turn out to be a good fit for the Mavericks. And that's all we're going to discuss when it comes to basketball in the episode. But before we talk about hockey, I just want to give you a little trivia note. This year, 2019, is the 5th time that both winter sports have first-time champions in the same year, with the Toronto Raptors and St. Louis Blues winning their respective championships. Previously, this has only happened 4 other times. Once in 1989, the second in 1991, the third in 1999, and the fourth in 2006. I already know the answers, but I want y'all to tell me. Off the top of you guys' head, who do you think the first-time champions are for each of the years I just listed off?
Chicago's 91.
I heard Chicago 91. That is correct for basketball, but who is it for hockey?
What?
I'm out on that one.
Think East Coast.
Penguins?
You are correct. It is, in fact, the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's
Well, I know the 99 is going to be the Dallas Stars.
True.
Yeah, I think we all knew that. Which means the basketball first-time champion is...
My boys, the San Antonio Spurs.
That is 100% correct. And now we're left with 1989 and 2006.
2006
I'm
was
going
the
to guess, wild guess here on 06, I'm going to say the Ducks, maybe?
Unfortunately,
It's a good guess.
Chip, you are correct with the Miami Heat, but the Anaheim...
Trust me, I'm well aware of that one.
Yeah, we all are, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the Anaheim Ducks were not the Stanley Cup champions in 2006. Think Eastern Coast teams.
Devils? No, they won in 2000.
Yeah.
Their name is a weather event.
Oh, the Hurricanes.
You are correct, Coolhand. The Carolina Hurricanes won their first Stanley Cup championship in 2006. And lastly, we have 1989.
I remember being mad about it.
Was 89? Was that the Blue Jays?
No.
Think more north.
The Blue Jays?
No, he's not talking baseball here.
Oh, okay.
Hockey. 1989 had a first-time basketball and hockey championship.
Yeah, I got nothing on this one.
If it's more north than Toronto, what are we talking like?
There's definitely
Ottawa?
distance.
Senators?
Coolhand is correct with 1989 winning with the Detroit Pistons winning the championship in 1989. For hockey, though, it is a Canadian team.
Oh, no, what? I just realized that I said a baseball team. I'm an idiot, and I apologize.
It's okay.
That's
Wow,
not
all right.
hockey.
Wow.
There goes my Jeff Gordon guess.
Jeff Gordon, dealer, I swear. 1989. It's a Canadian team that won their first Stanley Cup.
Calgary Flames?
Correct! The Calgary Flames' first championship was, in fact, in 1989.
Gross.
And with that... How dare y'all. And with that trivia note out of the way, let's jump right into the 2019 Stanley Cup Finals with the St. Louis Blues winning their first ever cup in 7 games. What are y'all's initial reactions?
Well, I would have been perfectly fine with them not winning their first cup. Something about St. Louis, I don't know, maybe just being a Dallas person, you're born to hate St. Louis. And it just seems like the sports world always sets us up to hate them even more. So seeing them win, this was something I didn't want to watch. This is like as if there was a custody hearing and neither of your parents showed up saying they wanted you. That was me. I did not want anybody to win this. You got Titletown, Boston, and you got scrappy St. Louis. So this one was not a solid one for me for interest-wise, but I watched it anyway.
The duality of the hockey fan.
For me, it was more of a pure hate. I watched every moment. I booed every goal of the finals, every single one. It didn't matter which side it was. But the fact that the Stars took the Blues to double overtime in Game 7 hurts my soul. Like, devastation. What the fuck? They were that close.
I feel like Buffalo has something to say about that.
Hey. That was a goal.
In the rule book, yes.
That was only Game 6. It's only Game 6.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a good series. I think that I got a hats off to the NHL for really sticking to their word where they say, hey, we're going to review all hits. We're going to still be issuing out suspensions. it's one of those rare sports where you actually see somebody get suspended and it affects you right then and there, right? You can make a crappy play in football where it's real dirty. You can put your helmet on someone's knee, bust it, blow it out, and no action is going to be taken to you until the championship winners have been handed out, right? And we know in baseball, to put it lightly, they pussyfoot around it. And they go, oh, hey, Gurriel, you're suspended next year. What is that? That's not what you do. And so to see those suspensions, come out, it was something really beautiful. It's like the league says, this is our championship. You want to break the rules, you're out of the championship. I love seeing that.
I will give the NHL credit for that because they suspended guys from both sides in the finals.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, hey, we're choosing a side. It's like, hey, don't do this shit or we're going to suspend you. And they did. So good on them for that.
And one of the things I got to say is that I was watching it at a bar, and it was pretty cool watching it next to a basketball fan because he says, can you be doing that? He's watching a lot of cross checks in front of the net and everything. And I said no. And he was like, well, why isn't there a penalty called? I said, well, playoff zebras are partially blind already, but they're even more so. And I said, the way you catch the playoff zebra's eyes is flopping. And, and that's something I want to say is that hockey keeps their sport real. The intensity level is up. The play is up because they're not stopping it for every little hack and, shove and little shake and bump and grind in hockey. You get to see the play continue.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and then we'll go from there.
Exactly.
Now, this series, a good chunk of the games were somewhat tightly contested. I mean, I'm looking at the box scores right here, and it's interesting because, you'd go from, Game 1, Boston won by 2, and then the St. Louis took the next game in overtime, and then Game 3, Boston just blew out St. Louis by 5 goals, only for St. Louis to come back in Game 4 and win by 2. St. Louis would then win Game 5 by 1 goal, would get blown out by Boston by 4 goals in Game 6, and then would take the series in Game 7 by 3. Is this... Let's say you're a first-time hockey fan watching the Stanley Cup Finals, and then you see those scores. Is this out of the ordinary, or is this expected?
I wouldn't call it expected, but I mean, he still won 7 games with 5 of them being blowouts. So it depends on your preference, I guess, at that point. Would you rather see a 7-game series, or would you rather see a 5-game series but every game is close?
So what did St. Louis do to... Well, I can't say contain Boston because they got blown out by them in a few of their matchups. But what did St. Louis do to Boston to win them the series? Was it a special defensive scheme they ran? Was their offense just too good against Boston's defense? Was it poor goaltending? What tipped the scales in St. Louis's favor here?
Man, I got to go ahead and give it to the netminder here. Binnington played on top of his head, and I mean, whenever you kind of just look at what kind of game performance he's had, and I don't know, it just seemed like whenever you were watching Game 7 and highlights, you just say, how did more of those shots not go in? He was making some unbelievable blocks all through the first period, right? They had no answer for Jordan through the first 2 periods. Finally, in the last period, they were able to put one through. And then the Blues said, oh, You think you're good? We're going to go ahead and put you away. It definitely came down to the netminder here. Jordan really won it for them. Hats off to him.
So the Blues were 8-2 in the playoffs after a loss. Or Jordan Binnington was 8-2 in the playoffs after a loss. That's amazing. If you can come back after losing a game in the playoffs and win that game, it is so huge. It's not just for the series itself, but also for the morale of your players, for your defensemen, to have the true trust in you that, hey, all right, whatever, we lost, we're just going to win tomorrow. I mean, the Blues had a losing record at home in this playoffs and a winning record on the road.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. If you can come into, if you can come right on into TD Garden, the Bruins' home, which has been roaring even during the regular season, and you can make it your home, that's something special.
Now, Boston entering this series was coming off of a 4-game sweep of the dark horse Carolina Hurricanes. You mentioned the St. Louis goalie. Was there something? What was lacking on Boston's side that made them fall short, or was it really the fact that St. Louis's goaltender was just that good?
I have to give the credit to St. Louis's goalie. I mean, he came up in the minors this year. Dude, he was playing in Texas. He was playing with the San Antonio Rampage before January. And when they called him up, they were the best team in the league. Not just winning the Stanley Cup, but also the second half of the season. They were in last place. Last. When they called Jordan Binnington up. And they ended up being the third seed in the Stars division. From dead last. However much I don't want to praise heap praise on Jordan Binnington, it was him. He won that championship for them. Without them, they have nothing.
So
I agree, and I think that the Blues, they took advantage of scoring the right amount of goals at the right time, because the Bruins the series put up 22 goals through 7 games. That's a lot, but it seemed like whenever they did score the goals, they kind of just went over to the goal bucket, dumped it out, and really enjoyed it, and then the next night came out flat. And that happened twice. And maybe it's something where you score a lot and you think, hey, we got these guys. Sure, you can watch the interviews and everyone says, oh, no, we don't got them. But there's kind of a feeling of domination whenever you're up in a series, 2-1, and you just won 7-2. That's a comfortable feeling. Especially if you go on the road. Especially on the road. I just gotta say that. You go into their town, you knock them down 7-2, you're feeling pretty cocky.
It really brings into the role of momentum in a series, though. Because when I saw that Bruins team beat that Blues team 7-2, the Blues, they looked outmatched. They looked like they didn't belong on the same surface. And the Bruins looked like they were just going to beat that ass. That they were going to win the next 2 games and this was over. Yep. And the fact that the Blues hung in there, they showed the heart. I mean, they've been showing heart all year. Coming back in January from dead last to finishing, where they did and winning the Stanley Cup. I don't think I've ever seen a team play with so much heart as those guys. They had no business being in the Stanley Cup this year, and they showed up.
The St. Louis Blues pulled together as a team. On paper, you see that Tuukka Rask was the second best goalie in the NHL playoffs this year. And that the Boston Bruins also had the best scoring skater in the entire playoffs in Brad Marchand. And, whenever you have the second best goalie and you have the best goal scorer, things are looking really good for your team. But then, if you look at the bigger picture, the St. Louis Blues absolutely dominated the top 10 list of having 5 guys in the top 10. That's a team. That means that, obviously the top 10 gets a little bit skewed because certain teams can't keep contributing to that list. Obviously, that's acknowledged. But that just shows you that they had to really pull together as a team to kind of come up into those standings. So, it's hats off. It wasn't just one guy dominating for the Blues. The skaters pulled together at the right times.
So y'all are heaping praise on the goalie for the St. Louis Blues. With that in mind, do you guys think that Jordan Binnington should have won the MVP over Ryan O'Reilly?
No. Because he had 2 really, really, really bad games where he wasn't just giving up goals, he was giving up stop goals. Goals that shouldn't be given up by a professional goalkeeper, even in the minors. And so,
typically, whenever you look at that, I agree. I think whenever you typically look at handing out an MVP, and you consider a goaltender, you would not consider a goaltender in a series that went 7 games. You would like to hand that out in a 4, 5, maybe 6. 7, not so much. 7, you really need some extraordinary cases of overtime, 1-goal deciders, maybe 2. But really, that's not when if we're talking 1-0, 1-0, 2-0, 3-2, those kind of things right there. I could see that. But Coolhand made a great point there. 5-1, that's not an MVP goalie. 7-2, that's not an MVP goalie.
So with that in mind, y'all are spelling it out pretty clearly that the goalie should not have won MVP. With that in mind, is there maybe a play or a goal that Ryan O'Reilly made that when you saw that you thought to yourself, yep, that is what got him Finals MVP?
No, there's not. Not for me.
Then what?
I would say his his plus minus on the ice. That was kind of more of a leading thing. And it wasn't so much the goals, but it was the assists. He played as a team player there.
It was the cumulative side of things. It wasn't necessarily this specific incident. It was he just plays so well throughout the whole thing. Because I would have given it to Perron because he scored 4 game-winning goals, 5 game-winning goals when they really needed them, and I might have considered giving it to him, but I would have never given it to Binnington. Never.
I agree.
All right, so with the Stanley Cup Finals behind us and a new championship crowned, this will lead us into the NHL free agency. Now we're going to go over some of the biggest signings here, starting with the left wing Artemi Panarin. Well, he's going to the New York Rangers for 7 years, $11.6 million. What do y'all think of this?
He is the bread and butter of this year, right? Everyone knew he was going to come, and I gotta say, hats off to hockey for doing it right. That there's not a lot of waiting around to see what's going to happen. Hockey said all throughout the regular season, all we heard was Panarin. Oh, okay. So Panarin's he's gonna be the guy you want in the offseason, but he's going to cost you. He knew it, right? And a lot of people were mad. They said, "Oh, well, this guy, he won't sign an extension. He won't even talk to the Columbus, And he wanted his payday. He got his payday. It's going to help bring the Rangers to serious contenders next year.
So you don't run across a talent like a Panarin very often in free agency. He's the real deal.
No, you don't.
What I will say is, how great it is for the Rangers, the Blue Jackets are fucked for the next 7 years. They lost everybody. They traded everything to make a run this year. And they swept the Lightning. But Columbus is toast. They lost their goalie. I'm sure we'll probably talk about him in a minute. But they lost their goalie and they lost their best winger. They're in a world of hurt.
Would you say?
Yeah, I agree. I think that you kind of look at where they're at as a team. You know that they need to do a lot of building. They somehow pulled together, right, and beat the Blues. Don't expect that yet.
Lightning.
So thanks. Sorry. Yeah, they magically swept the Lightning. It's not going to happen. Not next year. Not for sure.
So moving on in free agency, we have the one, the only Matt Duchene, the center, now going to the Nashville Predators for 7 years and $8 million.
A year. Who I feel bad for is Ottawa. Because Ottawa gave him a lot to get Matt Duchene. And, well, that's fine. They ended up not doing anything. They ended up having girlfriends and wives getting to a fight to the point where they had to get rid of people. So, came into a bad situation when it came to Ottawa. But I think this is a hell of a pickup. They overpaid for him, but I think it's going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that what Nashville's doing with their money and with their trades recently has been extremely smart. They're robbing other teams right now, especially the trade department. And it freed up a lot of cap space. They're able to move around. That kind of signing is the move of a smart GM. They can still... Highway robbery. That's not a trade. Amazing. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand how that was even close to a fair deal.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that Matt Duchene has the potential to replace Ryan Johansson as the number one center of their top line?
No.
Oh. Maybe in leadership.
Duchene maybe 3 or 4 years ago. We're talking about similar guys. I think Duchene's a little past his prime. But he will bring some leadership. He will bring some stability to that organization, which they kind of need, especially losing PK, Subban. And when you still got Pecorini, who's still playing well, they'll be all right.
I agree. I agree. It's going to be an interesting conglomerate there moving forward. But a lot of things are going to be changing there for them, especially whenever you add in such a veteran presence in the locker room like that.
And moving on to Brandon Tanev, going to the Pittsburgh Penguins for 6 years and $3.5 million.
When you're talking about $3.5 million a year for a defenseman, that's pretty good. So even if he's an average defenseman, it was worth the price.
I'm a very new school defensive thing. I think it's a lot faster. I think he plays a slower game, and I think it's really going to show, especially as the sport continues to evolve. You're going to see this contract come back and bite them.
Now you labeled him as a defensive man. Is he not a wing player?
His defense is what is rated extremely low, though. That's what I'm talking.
Oh, I see.
He's a very Dustin Bufflin type guy with not the skills that Bufflin had. So, yeah, you might call him a two-way forward, but really he's just an offensive defenseman.
Do you think 6 years was too long?
Well, I have a belief that anything longer than 3 years is too long in any sport. So, 6 years is definitely too long.
Fair. And the Colorado Avalanche are picking up Jonas oh Christ, how do you pronounce this? Donskoy. He's a wing. Donskoy. He's a right wing, and he's a right wing player, and he's gonna go to the Avalanche for 4 years and $3.9 million.
Who did he come from?
I believe he came from San Jose.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You know, Disucks, he's always one of those people that can quietly step up, make a good highlight play for you. You know, he's a solid move, especially for a team that has so much cap space. Like, they have lots of money. Hats off to the GM. The GM isn't just getting, you know, their eyes lit up and saying, look at all this spending we can do. The GM's going about it the smart way. That's a good way to do it.
There is one move I have to ask you about, Dealer.
Go ahead.
What do you think about Pavelski for 3 years, $7 million a year?
Amazing deal. Okay. Money-wise, it's payday. you know what I mean. But really, Miro is gonna really appreciate being around Pavelski. I believe that. I really believe it. You know, I had no idea that Miro's plus-minus was that bad. I had no idea. Granted, Miro had a lot of ice time. I remember at the beginning of the season, it was Miro, our hero. And now it's kind of like, yeah, he's good. He's pretty good, you know. And, you know, maybe we could finally advertise someone else besides Klingberg.
For those of you who don't know, the Dallas Stars signed a center, kind of a right-wing player, Joe Pavelski, to 3 years and $7 million, like Coolhand mentioned earlier.
You're not still bitter about the playoff series with the Knights and Pavelski?
You know, I gotta say, though, I am happy that the NHL changed the rule. We all knew it was going to have to change, right?
Right.
It's incidents like that fix the sport. I think we've gone over that a few times, and I can go into a huge tirade about that. Not going to do that. I'm going to be a good boy today. But no,
I was poking the bear a little bit.
no, you're not going to get me this time. I'm not going to get triggered.
Well, since we're on the Stars also signed the right winger Corey Perry to a 1-year deal worth $1.5 million. And from what I'm reading here, this seems to be like one of the most safe signings in all of free agency.
Well, first off, anytime you sign someone to a 1-year deal, it's a good deal. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. Second of all, Corey Perry in his prime was an elite player in the NHL. And to get him for $1.5 million is amazing. However, he has injury issues. So if he plays more than, say, half the games next year, it's worth every penny. If he doesn't, we'll see.
Let me ask y'all something. With the Stars adding Pavelski to their roster, how do you think this is going to shake up the dynamic trio of Seguin, Ben, and Radulov?
You know, I'm going to go ahead and say this. It takes the pressure off them. It takes the pressure off them by a lot. Because, you know, now you can Corey Perry and Pavelski, people who aren't afraid to bet. And it can help save their bodies a lot. And, I mean, honestly, I'm up for anything that provides us a little bit more off. Because goodness, it just seems like on that last Dallas Stars game, it was one goalie versus 5 shooters, and that was ridiculous. I mean, come on. I mean, if you add, you pluck him out of the Ducks, and he is going to be really happy. Sure, a lot of people are sleeping on it. Bad environment, but we've seen it time and time again where players who are in a bad environment on a contract year don't go all out. And that could be for a number of reasons. Now, some people say, "Oh, well, they don't have the fire in them." But I think one of the real big things here is they try and heal up in those really down years. They know they don't have to put their body on the line every single time because they know that whenever they're a free agent, they already have the name, and some team that's a contender, like the Dallas Stars, a fringe contender, right there, doesn't need that big splash, can take him, and they can contend even better.
Well, and one thing I love about what the Stars have done is, last year what really, really, really killed them was, if it wasn't one of those top 3 guys scoring goals, I'll even throw Heiskanen and Klingberg in there. So even one of their top 5 guys scoring goals, nobody scored goals. And they had to get some secondary scoring there. They had to. They had to do it. If they were going to be competing with anybody, they had to get secondary scoring. You brought it up with, it looked like Bishop on 5 guys last year sometimes during the playoffs, and it did. It looked like that. And so if those kind of scenarios are going to happen, you have to be able to outscore the other team. And I think that's the one thing I love about the Pavelski and Perry signings, especially for this season, is, hey, let's get some other scoring into this place and see what happens.
I remember one of the podcasts I was listening to right before the Vegas Knights played the Dallas Stars, and one of their scouting reports that they mentioned was they said Dallas Stars offense isn't the problem, it's their goalie that's the problem. The Dallas Stars can surely win a 1-0 game. That's no problem for the Dallas Stars. The problem is getting that one goal. And one of the things that they said was their goal scorers are broken up. And whenever you can isolate Ben or Sade, whenever they're isolated in their line, you can easily put 2 guys on them. That neutralizes them on the ice, and now their best goal scorer is done. This kind of helps break some things up because the Stars, the way they got around that was they had to put them on the same line. Everybody in the arena all of a sudden sat up and said, "Oh no, they're on the same line together. Oh, this is big," And Zook kind of helped out with that too, and their power line really just drew some heads that, oh boy, they're on the same line. Okay, now you can't body up. Now you got to play real hockey, one-on-one kind of thing. And this move here, it's going to provide a little bit more protection with some people that are proven goal scorers.
Exactly. You're exactly right. What killed them last year was lack of scoring outside the 3. And now you can actually split them up. I'd probably throw Perry on the line with Sagan and Ben, and then I put Pavelski, Radulov, and probably Dixon or Hintz on the second line. And I mean, those are 2 pretty legit NHL lines right there.
I agree, and and then I gotta say though, they're not done adding offense. Whether it be this off season that we see another goal, good forward goal to the Dallas Stars, or is it the trade deadline? I can see the Dallas Stars adding another big stick.
Now, do you think that should the Stars have re-signed Mats Zuccarello or signed Pavelski?
I see what Zook did there. Gotta say, it was a smart move to let Zook go, right?
Fair enough.
Zook is not a scary player. He's a little short guy who, he's a battler. He'll battle in front of the net. He'll do what he needs to do. He'll get the job done. But he's not worried. Oh, guys, Zook's on the ice. Oh boy, that's not what's going on. We know that. So it's really nice to see. But when Pavelski gets on, he's a leader on the bench and on the ice. Sure. And the Stars need that leader on the ice, no matter what line they put him on.
Sure.
Do you think Zuccarello is going to be that much of a difference maker in Minnesota, the team he signed with?
I love his fit there. They needed a piece or two more to really put themselves over the top. There's a lot of talent there. They just haven't been able to put it together for whatever reason. But I love his hustle. I love his hard work. He's very Antoine Roussel without getting in a fight every 5 minutes. I love his effort. And so I think he's a perfect fit for what the Wild needed.
Yeah, if you're a Wild fan, you're thrilled because you know that the Wild as a team don't like to trade. They see their prospects as keys to success in the future. And that's a Minnesota philosophy. So to see them go out and make a big splash like that, believe me, that's a big splash for Minnesota. They're not near the cap. They still got another $11 million to go, but that's kind of the thing. They didn't have to go and trade away future. They didn't have to sell the farm to rent a cow. This is something that they were able to play with in their budget and help them be better contenders.
With the Blues, Wild, and Stars in the same division, assuming none of the other teams in the Central Division exist, which one gets first, second, and third come playoff time? Stars, Blues, Wild.
Stars, Wild, Blue.
Stars and the Wild and the Blues.
No. I can't go for that. Sorry. That's not happening.
Hey. That's why it's a discussion.
Well, how would you rank them, dealer?
How? So you're saying Stars, Wild, and Blues?
Yes.
And we just tossed out the number one winner in the division, who got even better this offseason. We're going to ignore Nashville.
All right, fine. Throw Nashville in there.
You have to.
All right, let me rephrase the question. Are the Stars going to be a wild card team, or do you think they're actually going to get a spot on top of the division? Let me ask that.
They're top three. They're a top three team this year in the division for sure. Even though the Avalanche also got a shit ton better this offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to say if they get a spot, it's number 3. I feel comfortable giving them a wild card. I just do. I feel comfortable with that. I'm going to say this. Winnipeg fights for that 3rd and 4th spot.
Winnipeg's a good team, too. That's tough as well.
And, the weird thing is Chicago, they were in it for most of last season, right? Chicago kept talking about, we're just a few points away, And for a while, they actually did hold a wild card. And that was not a contending year. That was a blow-it-up year.
And they picked up a pretty good player in the draft who will probably play for them this year.
So you could see Chicago pull a Colorado Avalanche move and appear back in the playoffs when no one's expecting them to. This is a heavy, heavy division.
Yeah, it's a good division next year.
Yeah, this is going to be a gloves-on kind of division.
It might be the best division in hockey next year.
And
I agree. I don't see a rollover team in this division.
Yeah.
and we will see if the Stars emerge victorious amongst its Central Division rivals. In the meantime, that is going to do it for us here at the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. My name is Mickey, and I'm here with Dealer, Chip, and with Coolhand joining us in a little bit into the show. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Y'all have a great night.
Dealer, why don't you sign off?
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks for having me again. It was fun. I know a ton about hockey, so I was a lot of help on that last part. But yeah, you guys have a good one.
Thank y'all for listening, and tune in next time where we're going to talk, where the entirety of the next episode is going to be all about America's pastime. In the meantime, thanks for listening, y'all, and take care.